Hey, good evening, everybody. Good evening, good evening. Welcome to Stockport. Thank you to everybody for being here. Welcome to Question Time with Andy Burnham. Now, my name is Amy Welch. I am the North of England reporter for ITV National News. So you'll often see me on Blackpool Pier, getting drenched or outside court, or generally looking like I've been dragged through a hedge. So I've tried to be a bit more glamorous for this evening. The last time I did host one of these with Andy, we did have a power cut. So let's just hope we don't have a repeat of that this evening. We're here to get all of your questions. We're here to get to the bottom of the issues that matter to you tonight. We've got some special guests, Deputy Mayor Kate Green. We've got Danny Vaughan from Transport for Greater Manchester. We've got Barry Moore from the Fire Service, and we've got Terry Woods from Greater Manchester Police. Now, we just want to get through as many questions as we can tonight. So the way this has worked is I have been sent lots and lots of questions that you in the audience have submitted. And has not seen the questions. I absolutely promise he does not know what he's going to be asked tonight. Now, if you didn't submit a question or if your question wasn't picked, that doesn't matter. You know, we can all chip in, and, you know, if you decide that you want to ask something or you want to follow up a question that's being asked, just raise your hand and we'll try our best to get to you. What I would say is try to just be respectful of each other, you know, just let everybody have the chance to speak. Let Andy have the chance to speak because, you know, he's given up his time this evening for you. So should we give Andy a round of applause?
Oh, it's very kind, Amy. Thank you.
For
Thanks,
being
everyone.
here.
I was last here for Blossoms. Was anybody here that night when Blossoms played here? That was some night, wasn't it? But anyway, enough of that. Serious business tonight.
Let me just talk you through the topics then that we've got, Andy. I will give you that. Just so we've got the health, education, police and crime, children and young people, transport planning, and politics. So I'm going to try and spend about 15 minutes on each of those areas. There will be times where I'm sort of looking down, and that's not because I'm meaning to be rude, but this event is being live streamed, so on sort of Facebook, YouTube, and so people sat at home who haven't been able to make it tonight, they might be submitting questions too. So if I can, I'll try and.
It's like the boxing, isn't it? When they say for the millions watching at home.
For the millions. There are millions, Andy. I'm
Stockport.
sure of it. I'm sure there are millions of people that are watching this. So I think let's just get stuck in, shall we? Let's just get started. So our first question tonight comes from Jess Sanders. Do we have Jess somewhere? Hello, Jess. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's a nice, easy question to get you started. Do you have any ambitions to become an MP or perhaps Prime Minister?
We thought I was going to save this one till last, and I thought, do you know what? It's the elephant in the room. Let's just get straight in there.
Well, I'll go straight with the deflection. Thank you for coming, everybody. It's great to see the room so full. Well, I was one once, if you remember, and I mean it when I say it, that this is by far the best job I've ever had. And actually, Westminster was a place I was glad to leave behind. So I hope that's come over in the 8 years that I've done this job. To answer your question, in some ways, I've been there. I've been an MP. I've been a minister. So in ambitions, in some ways, no, really. My ambitions are here for what we can do through devolution. But I'm going to answer you honestly and say the political situation is sort of turbulent, isn't it, right now, to say the least. It wouldn't be me sort of saying, right, because I've tried twice to be Labour leader, and I've been told that I was not required twice. So, you know, you don't kind of keep putting yourself, but it would be if things changed to such a degree that, I don't know, you know, there was a call, but I don't see it like that. I am engaged on the job here. And the media are kind of trying to write it up as though I've got all this, plotting all of this and all the other. I can honestly say to you all, I've not spoken to any MP about any vacancy. I've not, anyone standing down. I've not built this infrastructure that they said I'd built my own campaign machine. I didn't. I added my name to a letter to show support for what they're trying to do. Because I think personally, if I'm, again, going to speak honestly, I think Labour needs quite a bit of change, really, in terms of the way it's running things internally, as well as changes. So I'm going to be honest and say that. So I'm kind of one of those voices. But people always add a lot of two and two and two together, and they make this sort of conclusion. And it's not quite like that. But I'm not going to say to you tonight that I'm ruling out any return, because obviously politics is very changeable. Let's say right now, and if I could play a role to support the government, then I would.
So Andy, that's not a no, is it?
No, it's not a no, but it's a kind of no for now, in that I'm really engaged here, and we're going to talk about a lot of the things. My mind is here. Is what I've been around Stockport today. I can prove that. I've been out and about doing some great things, and really excited about what's happening in this borough. I don't know if you feel that. I'm sure there are issues we can discuss tonight, but I just think it's pretty fantastic, actually, what's happened here, and what more can happen.
Okay.
I'm sure the tram might come up. Yep.
It will. We do have a sort of follow-up question to that, which I think is relevant while we're just on this sort of topic, and that comes from Yisrael Arthur. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name right.
Yes. Ooh, thank you. In terms of material quality of life for Mancunians, what is the key difference between what you might offer and that of a Reform UK-led administration?
I promise it gets easier after this, Andy. I promise.
Oh, right. Well,
It's a good question.
I suppose I can only speak for myself. Others might, have to speak for Reform UK. I would point first and foremost, I guess, to the B network. It might come up in other discussions, because I was really clear that in retaking public control of the buses, which is what I did 2 years ago, exactly, pretty much. And obviously there was a long time planning to get to that point. It was a big deal to take control of a sort of privatised, deregulated service. But we did it. Greater Manchester was the first in the country to do it. To me, public control means to then benefit the public. That's the point. That's why you do it. So we've got the £2 fare cap. Nearly every other place in the country, apart from London, Liverpool are hanging on, but we're the only ones that have got it. We're committed to it as long as we can. We've done a huge amount actually to lower the cost of transport beyond that, in terms of weeklies and monthlies. We've linked annual passes to credit unions, so people who couldn't afford the outlay of an annual pass now can pay in instalments through a credit union to improve quality of life. Hopefully, again, give me your feedback, but hopefully the buses are better than they were. They're certainly newer than they were. We're working hard at that. And, I'm conscious as well that it's got to benefit people of all ages. And I've had the call from people to say, well, can you do the, the older people's bus pass at age 60, like in London? Well, we just don't have those resources to do that. However, I am the first person in the country to have trialled the removal of the 9:30 restriction on the older people's pass. And we did that in the summer. And we're going to trial it again in November. And I would like, if I can, if Danny from TFGM says it's all right, then we're going to try and remove it altogether. So I'm doing all of that with the public control of the buses. From what I know of Mr. Farage, Mr. Tice, and others, they were arch, let's say, Thatcherites when the buses were broken up and sold off. And you know what? One thing that's really sticks in my throat is how we had to buy back the depots. GM buses of old, we had to buy them back for a large amount of money, and we were forced to give them away pretty much back in the 80s. And to me, they were the cheerleaders of that type of policy. The market will solve everything. Well, the market gave us higher fares, fewer routes, older buses, and I would say the B network is improving people's quality of life. We've got loads of electric buses out there. They're quieter, they're cleaner, hopefully improving people's quality of life.
But just to pick up on that, I don't think it can be disputed that Westminster is in flux. Keir Starmer is in trouble. Labour looks like it needs a solution, and clearly the media and others are looking to you to be that solution. Do you accept that? And if it was a case of Reform coming in and taking control as opposed to you being that saviour, as it were. How would you respond to that?
It's kind of like that's the Westminster kind of construct of it all, isn't it? And I would say I'm here to support the government where I can, but also I'm not going to hold back from saying where I think they need to change. I was a critic of the winter fuel allowance decision very early. I opposed the changes to disability benefits that I thought were wrong. So I don't hold back in making my critique. But one thing that you may not know, last week when things were sort of really raging, and all of these things were being written about how I was doing this, that, and the other in terms of plotting or whatever. I was actually working behind the scenes, negotiating a final agreement with the Hillsborough families on the Hillsborough law. That's what I spent part of my week doing last week, because I wanted that to be secured for the government, but also right for the Hillsborough families. And it's just a bit strange sometimes, from my point of view, when I kind of see all of this stuff that I'm meant to be doing, but actually that is what I was doing. So I'm not trying to avoid the question. I hear the kind of hype of Westminster, but it was kind of why I left it. I got fed up with the world down there. You can see it for yourselves. It's dysfunctional. Whereas I think what we're building here is more functional politics, where we're having a discussion tonight about things that matter to us here. Greater Manchester, I think, is hopefully higher up there as a result of devolution and the things that we've done. To be honest, to get the country in a more functional place, I would say we need more of this, more devolution, less Westminster, more Greater Manchester.
Okay. Well, let's get on to some of those issues that you've touched on. So buses, I know you love your buses, Andy. You love your buses, don't you? So we've got a question from Kevin Brady on the buses. Hi, Kevin.
On the buses. I'm pretty much Greater Manchester's Blakey. For those who remember Blakey, that's me.
Hi.
Hiya, Kevin.
Simple question is, I think that the bus service in Stockport is very poor, especially the link from Manchester through Withington Village, through East Didsbury. And the simple thing is, the 192 service, there's loads of buses, they don't keep to the time, they all end up in Stockport, one behind the other. On the route through East Didsbury, the 42, there's only 2 buses an hour. So if you're coming from Withington, you only get to Stockport every 30 minutes.
Does it go to Hazel Grove, that one?
No, I'm just going to finish, because
sure, yeah.
What I'm trying to suggest is that if you look at the bus service from Manchester through to Stockport via East Didsbury, you've got a bus service that ends at East Didsbury, the 142. There's 6 of them. There's 3 buses that come from Trafford through East Didsbury, and there's 2 coming from the 2 from Trafford Centre go directly to Stockport. My question is, if we review the buses now and say that the 6142s go to Stockport, it doesn't stop at East Didsbury Terminal. The 42s become a limited stopping bus like they used to have in the past, and it would take 40 minutes to go from Stockport to Manchester. You would then have 11 buses going from Manchester to Stockport. No, 3 from Trafford Centre to Stockport, and the rest going all the way through to Manchester, East Didsbury, Stockport. If you amalgamated them, you'd have 11 buses that would go through East Didsbury. If you then reviewed that now, and put that in operation, then there's no need for the Metrolink, because the Metrolink is going to be a very expensive and an unnecessary addition. Because for one, I would not go from Stockport to Manchester if it was linked.
So Kevin, can I just pick up? So what you're saying is that if the buses were better, we wouldn't need the very expensive metro.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Just making sure that we.
The idea is the 142 was the old student route.
Okay.
And it was Stagecoach student route where they put on all the rubbish buses and chucked all the students on, but they were cheaper. But they all finish at East Didsbury. If they didn't finish at East Didsbury and they finished at Stockport, then there'd be 6 extra buses going.
Yeah, I see. It's a really good question. Really good question.
I understand it.
Thank you so much for that, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Well, first thing I would say, and Danny might want to add to what I'm about to say, now we've got control of the buses. If you think that timetable isn't very good, and you did say you thought they were poor, we're going to have the chance, you're going to have the chance to review what you've got, because we had to franchise what was done in the past in the deregulated world. So we just had to take over what was being done. So we've not yet shaped your system according to what you might want. So you're going to get the chance early next year, Danny. I think it's the Stockport review will come through early in the early half of 2026. I think the first half of 2026. And you will be able, as residents of the borough, to say, can we change the pattern of services, and this area is under provided, this one's, and that's what we're doing at the moment in Wigan and Bolton. We're about to sort of put a revised network in. So you will get that chance. It's just that by law, we just had to regulate what was there at the time. So that's the first thing. On the question about we don't need the tram to Stockport, bear in mind, the thing we're looking at is a link on from Stockport to the airport. So it isn't just East Didsbury, Stockport. It's a sort of longer connection than that. And also, I was praising what the council had done. We've had a mayoral development corporation in Stockport where I've worked in partnership with all of the leaders that we've had in Stockport, and I pay tribute to them all, including those of Lib Dem leaders. Elise was the Labour leader, and we've worked with all of them to a point where you're getting major housing growth now in Stockport town centre, and we are literally about to write to the government. We're on the verge of it to ask for the doubling in size of the Stockport Mayoral Development Corporation, so that we can build, as I think I'm right in saying, 8,000 homes in Stockport. The thing I would say to you is the transport system is going to have to cope with a very different Stockport town centre, which I think is a good thing, because the extra people living in Stockport town centre are starting to lift the underbanks and other areas, and the economy is growing in your area. So we've got to look at the case for Metrolink in respect of Stockport and the way it's growing, and the fact that people might work at the airport and other places around the airport. So the Metrolink line needs to be looked at in that context. Lots of other areas would like it. Stockport, from all of the leaders of your council, have made a really strong case to us that they want Metrolink to Stockport. If anyone has, I don't know what the views are in the room on it, but we're moving ahead with it, unless you tell us otherwise, because we've built the new interchange with the capability to take Metrolink, and we think it will bring major benefits to Stockport, as it has done to other towns around Greater Manchester.
We do actually have a follow-up question to that from Tom McManaman, and I'm going to read out Tom's question. And he actually asks, can the Metrolink's extension to Stockport be brought forward prior to the next general election? Another government may postpone or cancel it, like HS2. So another view there, forget cancelling it. Can we get on with it sooner?
Well, I've said that to TFGM, to be fair. And the date they've given me is 2030. That's when we hope we'll have work starting and then operational in the first half of the next decade. But I've said to them, can we speed that up? They've not given me a full answer yet, but I would like to see that if we could, we would do. Bear in mind, though, it's not the case that nothing will be improving in the interim. So just so everyone knows, you're going to be quite a big beneficiary of the 8 rail lines coming into the B network. So from next year, I'm trying to remember actually, the Glossop to Piccadilly line, does it come through here? It does, I think, doesn't it? Or is it Tameside? Hazel, or only Hazel Groves? Yeah. But then there's other lines that will, come through Rose Hill and other places. So Stockport, I can't remember the number of stations, Danny, but there's going to be quite a significant number of Stockport train stations. In effect, are almost becoming yellow like Metrolink, because you'll be able to tap in at those stations and you're kind of tapping into the B network system. So yeah, I'd love to speed up Metrolink if I could.
I mean, I think the reason Tom's question is such a good one is that we had so many broken promises, didn't we, over HS2? And there is a fear, I think, amongst people that that's just going to happen again. It's going to be more broken promises and it's not going to happen. I mean, what guarantees can you make, and how much power do you really have to make sure it does happen?
I think I can reassure you, because obviously we created the Stockport Mayoral Development Corporation. We said we would build an interchange. We did it, even with the pandemic. We said we would, get housing growth going around it, which we have. We said we'd build it with Metrolink capability, again, which we've done. Obviously, we've regulated the buses in Stockport, and they're significantly changed. So I think from our point of view, we have done what we said we would do. We're going to an all-electric depot here. We're on with plans for that. You're going to have I would say, to go back to Kevin, I think you're going to have one of the best transport systems outside of London soon, because you're going to have quite extensive bus, train, and eventually tram within the Stockport borough, and that is a really good quality integrated public transport system.
We've got a few other people. I'm just going to go to the gentleman just on the right, just to give someone else a chance, and we'll come back to yourself, Kevin. Is that okay? So if we the mic's coming to you, just give us a second. Hi there.
Yeah, I actually wrote the question, but my point was, in Ashton extension at Atton Valley, you started in 2028. So why can't you do them both in parallel and have a bit more of an ambition for the south of Manchester as well as the north? Or haven't you got the facilities or the capabilities to handle 2 projects?
I mean, to be fair to Transport for Greater Manchester, it's partly that. But in effect, we are developing these 2 lines concurrently at the moment. I think there is an extra hurdle with this one, in that we've got to get the business case for Stockport Metrolink agreed. So I think it's a little further back, to be fair. It's not that they're both exactly at the same stage, Danny, is it? I think Stockport Metrolink is behind the Atton Valley line. So they are if you like, our immediate 2 priorities in front of us. And for those who don't know, that will be a tram train that goes up via Haywood, and on via Atton Valley, which is a big regeneration site, Haywood up to Bury, using the Heritage Railway route. So it's more deliverable for that reason, I think, and it's a bit more advanced. The Stockport one has to go through, as I say, another process with the government. It's a outline business case, I'm right in saying, rather than strategic business case, which is, sorry, it's the jargon, but it's just that little bit behind. But I have asked the question, can we speed it up? And we would like to, Amy, if we could.
Do you understand that loss of trust, though, after that huge HS2 broken promise? I mean,
completely.
Yeah.
We were just...
It was handled badly, wasn't it?
Well, without getting all political tonight, because I try not to do that at these things, but it was the previous Conservative government that came here, didn't speak to myself or any of the local leaders, despite many requests to, and scrapped it in our city at a conference after Osborne had come, 10 years previous, promising us everything. That it was utterly disgraceful what they did. And this is the way they treat the north of England, isn't it? That they think they could do that. Would someone like stand up in, I don't know, Brighton at a conference, Bournemouth at a conference, or London at a conference and scrap something without talking to the city where they were? I don't think so. But I can understand how people would feel completely outraged by that. I was outraged by that, and we vented that feeling. But I want Transport for Greater Manchester to have the credit sometimes that maybe they don't always get. What was the last Metrolink extension? It was to Trafford Centre, so the Trafford Park line, delivered on time and on budget. So I think they've got a pretty good track record in doing what they say they will do to the time that they say it.
We've got another question, still sticking with transport, from Sam Joey. I hope I'm saying your name right.
Thank you. It's Joel.
Oh, sorry.
Nice
apologies.
try. Don't worry. What do you think the likelihood of a high-speed rail link across the M62 corridor is in the next 10 years?
I hope there's a high likelihood. And I've had a conversation with a senior person in the Treasury about that very issue today. Again, I'm going to say it. I think this government should have got on with committing to it earlier. We shouldn't still be waiting. But obviously, these things need to be looked at in the current context. But myself and the Mayor of the Liverpool City region have developed a really clear plan for a new Liverpool-Manchester line. This is 200 years almost exactly after the very first commuter rail line in the world. What is it about the country now that we can't deliver something 200 years on after they did it all of those years ago? But this line, we're clear, would be, it's like an Elizabeth line for the Northwest. It would have 5 stops: Liverpool City Centre, Liverpool Parkway connected to the airport, Warrington Bank Quay, Manchester Airport, Piccadilly, and an underground at Piccadilly, and then on to then connecting to the Trans-Pennine route upgrade, which, to be fair, was started by the last government, and this government has continued. So if you go over the other side, you'll see there's loads of work on the ground there. So that stuff is being done. So we just want our new line to click into that. So to be honest, I think that is the biggest rail project in the north that will come forward. And if it doesn't, I will criticise this government in exactly the way I criticised the last, because we need that capacity. And I have to say, we need north-south as well. You will experience this at Stockport. The West Coast Main Line is just not good enough for the needs of this area. It's too unreliable. The capacity is over capacity, and also we need, if it's not going to be HS2, but we need a replacement for that line. Going forward, if it's just London and the southeast that has modern high-speed lines going, and then they all stop at Birmingham, that is such a dangerous place for us to find ourselves, that we have to have old Victorian infrastructure and they get to modern infrastructure. So I won't stop making the case for all of this. I don't know if you all experienced it this week. M60 just has an accident and everything grinds to a halt. Getting round the M60, you had a bad accident here in the summer, didn't you? On the M60 at Stockport, really, really sort of tragic sort of situation. It's because it's too full. The railway is too full. We are the fastest growing city region in the UK. I keep saying this to the government. We need infrastructure to support that growth. And currently, and we all feel it, won't we, in our lives, it's full, isn't it? It's creaking. It's over capacity, and it needs to change. Just
before we leave transport, because I have to say it was the topic that got the most questions from all of you, because we just want to get from A to B, don't we? But the lady in the stripy top, do you still have a question? Do you want to? Sorry, I wasn't ignoring you. I think we can probably get the mic to you so everyone can hear you. But I did see you out the corner of my eye. Sorry, I wasn't.
Thanks, Andy. So I'm actually new to Edgeley. I've only been here for a year. So prior to this, I was in Altrincham. So I've been a Metrolink user all my life, pretty much. And I've always felt that the main issue with the Metrolink was the fact that it just goes straight into Manchester. It doesn't go anywhere else. And only recently has it been starting to go to East Didsbury, Trafford Centre, etc. And I think when I was in Altrincham, the main thing that people were saying is they wanted a circle line. They wanted the more connections within the boroughs. And obviously you're saying about going to the airport and stuff, which sounds great. And obviously that links us to there. But my fear is it still will be airport to Manchester. It's always going to Manchester. And I think, cost of living now, people don't go into the city centre. They do go out to the parks. We are, that's why Stockport is doing so well, because people are moving out of the city. So I just want to kind of know what you're looking at. And I've seen, obviously, your vision. And it looks fantastic, but we're looking at 2030 with this Metrolink coming into place. And I just think 5 years' time, and then what? We got another 10 years before the Circle Line. We look at Copenhagen, we look at London, all the capital cities. And Manchester is a major city now. It's one of the most successful cities in the UK. I think we left Birmingham behind long ago. And on that, just while I'm on it, this cost of living is rising in Manchester. this is why you're looking at the buses, this is why you're looking at the Metrolink, this is why we're discussing all these things, because people are using public transport. So that was kind of my question. It's not really a question, it's just more kind of a vision, really. Thank you.
No, it's great. And both of you have asked, you both sort of voicing what I feel every day. I do feel a bit of that frustration in my job because, I say it again, we are the fastest growing city region in the country. We've had averaged 3.1% economic growth in the last decade when the country has had really sluggish growth. So finally, the gap between us and the south is narrowing. That's the first time in our lifetime that has happened in this last decade. And, the north-south divide is finally closing to a degree. That's like a massive deal. And devolution is the thing that's changed that. And so, in my view, we should be really proud of that. But then I kind of can't get my head around, the facts speak for themselves, the evidence is there. Why do I constantly have to go on bended knee to say, please, can we have some funding for some infrastructure? They should be coming here now saying, right, we've got growth. This is the growth we want as a country. We're going to put in, big expansion to the M60 or unblock the bottleneck junctions that we all know about. We're coming in with a replacement for HS2 so that, Stockport, your West Coast main line, if you got HS2, it'd be so much freer. You'd have such better services on the West Coast main line. I don't understand it. And this is the problem I left, going back to the start, actually. I left Westminster because of this London-centric sort of approach. The country still is absolutely dead set in that mindset, and it's how do you break it out of it. We are doing an orbital line, by the way, so the line that the gentleman referenced is more of an orbital line. It's going round, linking sort of Oldham, Rochdale, then into Haywood, and then up to Bury. So that is our first, really, what you would call orbital Metrolink. If we could do many more of those, honestly, we would do it. But we've had to really fight for Metrolink. When I was an MP, the last Labour government tried to scrap it up to Oldham and Rochdale, and we had to fight to stop them doing that. So it's just something about the way the country is and the way the mindset works. That transport in the north is a cost, but it's always an investment in London. Well, this is what we'll never stop fighting against.
We've got just another question from the gentleman at the front.
And Kevin had one of you.
And
said,
Kevin,
a follow-up.
I've not forgotten you, Kevin, don't worry.
Hi, Kieran. I'm retired from Disability Stockport these days. It's a long time since we spoke, Andy.
Yeah, it is. Nice to see you.
Just before we leave transport, I think it's very important. I wanted to raise the issues about the bus pass situation. And we had a disabled pensioner called William who contacted us when we were told him we were coming tonight. And he said that he'd just got a new job, a disabled pensioner. He's now going from Stockport to Manchester, which is everything we want to see. And he said he was delighted to save being able to go on his bus pass for 2 days a week in August. And he says it's taken a bit of the joy out of the job. Nowadays he's got to cost him £20 for those 2 days. And it doesn't sound a lot to people, but it's an awful lot to many people. And he wanted to ask if there were any plans to include trains and trams in future trials and whether it's likely to be extended. And just one more thing from Disability Stockport itself, because we've had a lot of involvement in bus passes and in issuing bus passes. They're very complex. And to access them, you need to help and support, which shouldn't be the way. There's no need for that. There's a lot of disabled charities and organisations out there that would help that process a great deal.
Well, it's very good feedback here, and thanks for raising all those points. And it was William, did you say? Yeah, I'm really pleased to hear that. Obviously, it's difficult when we've kind of gone back. But just so everyone knows, this is the older people's bus pass and the disabled people's bus pass, concessionary passes. There's been a rule in place for a long time that it can only be used after 9:30. And when they were originally introduced, the fear was we'd have too much overcrowding in the peak time, and therefore, they had to put that restriction in. Now, because we've taken control of the system, and we actually, although we haven't changed the routes, Kevin, we've put more capacity into our system, so there's many more buses on our roads. I said to TFGM, well, come on, let's see if we can get rid of this thing. So we trialled it in the quietest month, August, to start with, because no one would thank me in this room if it was chaos and no one could get on. And, So what happened before 9:30, about 6,000 people across Greater Manchester were using their passes like William. So that doesn't seem like a sort of unmanageable number. And the vast majority were using their passes between 9 and 9:30, or 40+% were using them then. So we've now said, okay, well, let's trial this again in the busiest month of the year, which is November. That's when most people are on the public transport system. So that's coming. So you can tell him that, I know it's not ideal, but in sort of 8 weeks' time, he'll be able to use it again. And then with the leaders, I'll make a decision about on the back of that as to whether we can do it permanently. But I hope we can is the answer. I can't extend it to tram because obviously it's quite full, isn't it? The buses have capacity to be able to take this, but the trams less so where they're operational. But we would obviously we want to do it if we can, but I've got to do it in a way that is manageable. And just to say very lastly again, how can we do all these things? People ask me about, well, how can we make these moves and sort of keep the fares low, etc. In the past when people were paying their fares for buses here, and bear in mind fares in the past used to be £3, £4, that money was just going out of Greater Manchester to the shareholders of the bus companies. Now the public control means if people are using the B network, the increased revenue comes back to us, and then we can recycle that back into lower fares. And this is why this system works for us, and why we can do things like the things that we're doing. So I just need to put a plea out to you all. If you're not a B network user, please think about it, because the more that people use it like they do in London, where public transport is the first option, not the car, the extra money that comes in means the money comes back in, and we keep the whole thing sort of improving. So on the pass application process, Danny, you've heard that point. I'm sure there is something we could do to simplify it. Do you want to say something about that? Yeah, we just introduced for the kids, the 16 to 18-year-old bus pass. That's gone digital, hasn't it? And we are looking at doing the same, aren't we, for the older and disabled people's pass?
That's an improvement we can make in the future. I think we have a lot of staff in our travel shops. I just encourage people who help folk all the time with their applications. And I think we've digitized the Hour Pass product, and we can do that again for other types of concessions.
I work on the shop floor at Disability Stockport, and I help people a lot fill in these disabled bus passes, a concessionary fare. And the issue isn't necessarily the paper format, it's the fact that people have to provide so much evidence, particularly neurodiverse people who might not still be under a clinician, because once you get your diagnosis, you're discharged from the clinic, you won't be kept under the ADHD or the ASD clinic. So then when they're providing the evidence, they've not got it to supply, and then they're not back, so they're excluded from being able to get these bus passes. They've done a little bit of work where we can stamp and say, oh, we've seen these people and stuff like that, but the process is so long-winded. And to process the bus pass application from start to end, you're looking at months. It's not a quick process. People aren't getting these passes. It takes 4 to 5 months for them from start to end to come through.
But that's the point of Mayor's Question Time. It's like the hot seat I do on BBC Manchester. This is why I say I kind of prefer this role to my old roles in Westminster. I hear that, and I'll be on to Danny tomorrow. Is there anything we can do? Because that's the way we want to work. So the type of feedback you've just given is we will look at it, and I don't know whether we can speak to our colleagues in the Greater Manchester NHS to see if there could be a quicker verification via if the applicant gives the GP name, his or her GP. Well, that's what I mean. We need to look at seeing if we can sort of wire this in a bit of a better way to reduce the time and the cost. So okay. Thank you, but we will look at it.
So you heard it here. He is going to look at it. I will hold him to it. The other thing you do have to look at tomorrow, as well as speaking to Danny, is you do have 2,000 bus workers going on strike tomorrow, Andy. So Gary Levine, I don't want to burst your bus bubble. I'm really sorry, but Gary Levine has come to us on X, and he says, Andy, what is being done to resolve these bus strikes?
Well, I can honestly look you all in the eye tonight and say we have tried everything that is reasonably within our gift to resolve them. So it's not us who are in direct negotiations, and this is the kind of the nature of the system that we have. It's the operators who are still on our system. They are doing the direct negotiations. So it's a bit difficult. But what we have been really clear with them about is there are too many pay differentials across our system. So when we inherited the deregulated system, bus driver pay went from something like lowest as at £15 an hour, highest £18 an hour, there or thereabouts, Danny. A little bit lower, 17 something. So we have really worked hard this week to say we're not in opposition to our bus drivers. We think it's hard to drive a bus around Greater Manchester. It's a tough job. And actually, we think they do deserve more pay than that. So we are doing what we can. On the outlier areas, the £15, we definitely have got something on the table that significantly improves the position of drivers in that position. In terms of the upper rate of pay, there's something on the table that actually means that our bus drivers are amongst the highest paid in the country. Again, you could say, is it enough? But we can only do what we can do, and this is where the dispute has come down to. I think they're saying they want it all done in this year, but we can't. We physically, the operators, I should say, can't do it all in this year. We have really worked hard to do it, and I think we've done enough to justify the suspension of the strike, and that's what we said to them today. Well, look, we've clearly done something to respond to what you're saying, and we're not in opposition to you at all. I find it disappointing, to be honest, that they haven't at least suspended, but I'm not going to criticise. It's not, as I say, they've got a job to do, but I think enough has been done to justify suspension. If you look around the country, bus disputes, these disputes are going on everywhere, and they've been settled in other places at lower than the rates that are on the table in Greater Manchester. So I don't know why that is the case. We'll carry on working at it. But I think from what I've said tonight, we would say, we did enough to at least move things forward. And what I have done further than that, I've spoken to the General Secretary of Unite, the trade union, this week, and I've agreed with her that we'll move towards pay harmonisation in Greater Manchester, so that there's a standard rate of pay for all bus drivers across our city region, and we'll do that at a minimum level, and we'll do that within quite a short time frame. So we think these are big things that we've put on the table, and I don't think anyone here would thank me just to sort of kind of allocate money that isn't there. I can't do that because we're still building the B network. We've got to make it financially viable, sustainable, but even within that, we've materially improved the position of bus drivers here, and in terms of what's on the table. And we would hope that would be enough, at least, to have further discussions and for the action to be suspended. And maybe it's too late now in the day, but I still would hope they might be prepared to do that.
Okay, I think we are going to have to leave transport there. Kevin, thank you for kicking us off with that question. Do you feel that your questions have been answered and addressed? Oh. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
The Metrolink is viable.
So I think there's just an urgency, isn't there, from everybody that.
I hear that.
Say,
Kevin, definitely. I don't disagree with anyone who's saying, well, we need it sooner. So I'm
the bus.
Yeah, no, I hear that as well. I'm making the general point that all of it needs to improve as quickly as possible.
We can get a bus from Stockport twice an hour from Stockport to the airport.
Well, yeah, sometimes though, the roads are blocked, and you can't just say, I wouldn't say if I were you, if I lived here, I would say if you can have other options other than the bus, it's a better situation, because sometimes, as you've experienced around here, you have roadworks, you have delays, the Metrolink doesn't suffer from that.
Okay, I think we do need to move on because we're halfway through and we're still on transport. So there are other issues. I know transport is really important, and hopefully we've got into a bit of the nitty-gritty that we wanted to about that. The next area I want to come on to is planning and housing, another really important area of discussion, I'm sure you'll feel. The council today have announced a 15-year vision. Lots of new homes, plans for new secondary schools. So, they've got plans in Stockport to do lots of exciting things. We've got a question from Joe Sellers, who's asked me to ask this question. Andy has been on the record saying that watching that housing strategies and developments are not turning into gentrification instead of regeneration. Local experience is that gentrification is happening in Stockport Central. What, if anything, is the mayor doing to ensure that existing local people are not being forced out of local areas? So I think that's a really big concern. You've got all these plans, but, are they going to be affordable for everybody?
Well, we want there to be affordable homes for everybody. So I can point to one scheme in Stockport Town Centre, which I think is 100% social rent. And it was on one of Stockport Council's old sites. So it's next door to, the Stockport Housing Office, where the Guinness Trust have been building new homes there. And that was kind of a partnership with us, because I'm pretty confident we provided the brownfield cleanup funding, and the council have been working with the Housing Trust to bring those forward. So that is something I would point to. The new homes that have gone in by Stockport Interchange, they were, I think they are more at market rent, but I think some of them are affordable within that scheme. And we've got to fight. I'm conscious of the point that's being made, and this is a critique often made of Manchester City Council. But credit to the new leader. Well, I say new leader, she's been in position now for a couple of years. We were on site, she and I, at the kind of breaking of the ground on the first social homes in the city centre for 40 years, and that's at the old Boddington's brewery site. So I think the critique was more valid, I would say, when I first arrived as mayor, or even a bit later than that. I think the kind of new generation of leaders that you've got actually are more kind of focused on social housing. And I think you can see some evidence of it here, some evidence of it in city centre Manchester. And I've got an overall plan working with them for 10,000 council homes in the mayoral term. So, we are conscious of the risks of gentrification. You can see how attractive Stockport is becoming, but we also have a clear commitment to guard against that.
Hopefully that does answer Joe's question. Does gentleman at the back, do you want to ask a question about housing and planning?
Hello. So obviously the Renters Reform Bill is coming in at some point. One of the fears that I have about it, that may be an unintended consequence, is they're scrapping assured short-hold tenancies, which, as someone who is in a single-income household on universal credit, partners on PIP, that doesn't count as income for things like I can't remember where you have to get the guarantors. And I think a lot of young people are in that position where they struggle to prove their income, even though they may be getting sufficient amount through things like benefits and by paying in advance. So what can be done with perhaps the Good Landlord Charter for Greater Manchester to ensure that people who are on benefits and who rely on that aren't going to be in fear of being kicked out of their homes because they aren't able to prove that they're able to pay that monthly rent once the short-hold tenancies get scrapped?
That's a really good question. And for those who've not followed this, in the last few months, we've formally launched the Greater Manchester Good Landlord Charter. And it builds on the model we've had with the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter. You've got many employers in this borough who've been formally accredited under the Employment Charter. And that covers more than legal minimums in terms of employment. So we've got exactly the same model coming through with housing. And even though it's only been live for a few months, 250,000 properties are already covered by the Greater Manchester Good Landlord Charter. So already we've got quite a significant take-up in social rented and private rented sectors. So as you're implying, the whole idea of the Good Landlord Charter is to go beyond legal minimums, and that is exactly the kind of thing that we could look at to add into the Greater Manchester Good Landlord Charter. So I'll take, again, it's a really good suggestion. I'll take that back. You know, what we're doing is we're linking these charters to public procurement. So it's not that they're just pieces of paper. If you go back to the buses, we link the process of re-regulating buses to the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter. And the effect of that is all the bus companies now have to be accredited under that charter. So in one example, no bus driver out there today has no access to sick pay. That was the case in the old system. It's not the case anymore. So we're going to be doing more and more with the Good Landlord Charter to follow that route. And we've evolved the Good Employment Charter all of the time when people like come along with ideas like that and say, why don't you do this? This would help. So we're open to that idea. So thank you for raising it.
And we had another question, the gentleman in the blue top.
Hi, Andy. So my question is, I understand, and I think we all understand the need for housing, 1.5 million homes by the end of this government term. And I also kind of understand the change in the legislation for development on grey belt land, which is land linear, adjacent to railways, main roads, etc. What I don't understand, and I'd like you to explain if you can, why is good quality green belt land, not grey belt by definition, being released for planning? Now, I live in an area near Woodford, so I'm talking about really good quality green belt land, where there's a really massive, really big site, the former BAE, British Aerospace site, Red Road developing around about 1,000 homes, putting another planning application for another 500. That whole site, if developed, I think could probably accommodate around about 3,000 or 4,000 homes. Why can't development be just on that site in Woodford, as opposed to other areas that are being released or potentially being released? And that also question extends to other areas. I know there's other areas in Stockport, High Lane, for example, is under pressure of housing. So is Hazel Grove, where they're going to be potentially releasing greenbelt land. And had Stockport remained or voted to stay in the GMSF, which it didn't, it was the only borough that didn't, would it be exempt from all of these planning applications going into good quality greenbelt land?
Well, that is a very sort of on-point question, because we did make that argument to Stockport when they left the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework. So for those of you who didn't follow all the technical details, this was a sort of plan for all of Greater Manchester. And it was difficult, don't get me wrong, because it had to allocate land for house building, because all of the 10 councils have legal targets around house building, and they have to allocate enough land to deliver the numbers that they are legally required to deliver. So it's not something they can just ignore. They have to have a plan to do it. The logic of the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, as it used to be called, now Places for Everyone, is it allowed us, by linking us 10, it allowed us to sort of, if you like, give a discount to certain areas. So because the city council is building above its target, and Salford City Council is doing the same pretty much now, it allowed us to let other boroughs build under their target. And Stockport was one of those boroughs. You would have had quite a significant dividend. I think from memory, about 70 to 80% of you would have got you'd have been let off sort of 20 to 30% of your housing target. Now, fair enough, people make decisions, but we did say, if you opt out of that, you're going to be more at risk of speculative development on your green belt. We did say that at the time. And I know the debate was very fierce in the borough at the time, and there were different views, but that was the Greater Manchester view, what you're articulating. We said, because developers then can kind of go against the council and say, no, they're going to have to release because they've not released enough land. It made Greenbelt more vulnerable being outside of the Greater Manchester plan than being inside. It was kind of portrayed as we were hoovering it up and we were wanting all of your Greenbelt. It wasn't, in my view, it wasn't like that. In fact, the thing I'll celebrate is that we've all joined with the council on the Mayoral Development Corporation, because that has built more homes more of your need in the town centre. And that's a good thing, because that then takes the pressure off. But we've worked together on that. Going back, though, we would have said you'd have been better off staying in, because you'd have got a lower target, and any sites outside of that target would have been more fiercely protected by the protections of the planning framework. But anyway, we are where we are. But that was our argument that we made at the time, and obviously it was under a Labour minority administration, I think, when the position was overturned, and not because they did vote for it, but I think the majority of councillors in the end united against the original proposal.
You're very quick.
So I appreciate the answer there, Andy, but going back to the first part of the question, why is greenbelt land being released as opposed to greybelt? Because my understanding of the definition of the release or the expansion of development onto greenbelt land wasn't greenbelt land as in good quality, it was greybelt. So why is good quality greenbelt land now being released in Stockport? I understand that you've answered the question regarding the protectionism's gone from being outside of the GMSF, but surely the greenbelt directive should still apply.
Well, the honest answer to the question is I don't know as much now because when Stockport voted out, I'm not sort of, those are matters for Stockport Council. I think what we have picked up is that perhaps there's more speculative applications going in about Greenbelt. And because the plan isn't there anymore, the ability of the council to resist is not as strong. So it's not that it's being released. I don't know, I'd have to check the details. It's just that the ability to stop it is weaker than it would have been if you understand the point I'm making. On the grey belt point, I just think there is grey belt in the borough, but it isn't sufficient to cope with the need of the numbers that you've got as a local authority. So it can take some, but it wouldn't be enough for all of your housing need. And I think some of the grey belt is right close to the M60 because from memory we'd looked at that for a bus depot here. So I don't think it's necessarily the grey belt is attractive, if you like, for housing development. No, some of it is right by the M60.
Thank you for your question. We've probably got time for one more on this issue of planning and housing, and then we'll move on. So just this lady, just in the middle near the back.
Hi, Andy. I'm with the housing, well, not with the housing, but I'm currently actually homeless at the minute. I'm living in temporary accommodation for the last 3 years, me and my kids, which was due to, I think you was talking about the Section 21s or something to do with the landlords. Yeah, so I was like a victim of the Section 21s. I was working and all that kind of things, and it was down to disrepair. But yeah, I'm just kind of just trying to ask, how long is the housing gonna, do you know what I mean? Like the whole planning and trying to rehouse people that are living in unfit temporary accommodations.
Oh, I feel for you. I'm sorry you're in that position.
Yeah, it's been hard. Mental health plummeted, but working has kind of kept my head, and my kids have kind of keeping me going. So yeah, I've kind of got myself back up now where I kind of need to be. Done. But it is the whole temporary accommodation. They're unsafe and disrepair, and actually when you take it any further, it doesn't go any further to the council, to the MPs, to just like even the support that they say that's out there. It's not actually out there.
No, we feel for you. And the housing, this is what you find yourself in, is the human cost of the housing crisis. We all hear the housing crisis on the television, don't we? As though it's like something that just affects bricks and mortar. The people cost is significant. There are 6,500 children in Greater Manchester currently living in temporary accommodation, and that number has grown a lot over the recent time. And it's because, I hate to say this, but it's the truth, we are still losing more social homes every year than we are building. So the grip of the housing crisis, I'm afraid, and includes this borough, is getting tighter rather than being loosened. In the last year, 2 of our 10 councils have gone into surplus for the first time in 15 years. So Salford and Trafford have started to build more social homes than they are losing. And the thing I mentioned before about 10,000 across all of Greater Manchester is so we get all of our boroughs into a surplus position again, so that once we're easing that situation. So I mentioned those homes that are being built in the town centre, but we need a lot more of that. But we're working with Stockport Council on that. But for me, the single biggest thing this country could do right now, we've obviously mentioned transport infrastructure, and that is really important. I would have the biggest council house building programme. And I say council house building because I think it's really important that we get homes back under democratic control, so that there's fairness then, and local accountability to people as to how those homes are being allocated. That is my view. I think we should be doing what the post-war Labour government did, which is build hundreds of thousands of council homes up and down the country. Because if I go back to sort of when I was younger in the 70s and 80s, the people I grew up with, of our generation, the council home was just massively important in terms of the foundation and the security that it gave, and then therefore the aspirations people could have in life because of that foundation of a council home. The fact that your kids are growing up without it, really, I find it, it really pains me to hear that. And I don't think we're going to get back to a better position in this country until we've put the housing crisis, honestly, number one. If you've not got a good home, what have you got in life? It's no good if I've improved the B network if you're in temporary accommodation, is it? Because your housing is a more higher priority than that.
But yeah, if my kids haven't got the support, but yeah, I'm out there helping other children as well, it's kind of a bit of a
I know,
and I'm stuck in,
Yeah.
but it's the process as well that the council actually put you through when they put us in a hotel for 4 to 5 weeks and having to check in and out. But they put my kids down at one end of the corridor and I was down at the other end of the corridor, and I was just like, wow. I mean, yeah, my head fell off, and I just thought, this is just not good. Just the process to start with is not good.
I mean, I don't know what
Manchester City Council.
Right, and they are trying, Manchester, to as I said before, they are building a lot more social homes than they used to, and some of the standards in temporary accommodation, Amy, there's just not. This is where I know it's not acceptable. But the thing I would just sort of come back to and say is, this is the best investment the country could make. The 10 councils of Greater Manchester currently, between them, are spending £75 million a year on the cost of temporary accommodation.
But you promised to eradicate rough sleeping, and the number of people that are homeless is going up.
Well, there's a difference between rough sleeping and homeless, because obviously you can be homeless, like the lady said, but you're obviously housed, but you are not in a good place. Rough sleeping is, it's come right down, I'm proud to say, in my time.
How do we help this lady now? Because I think the point that she's making is that your children are growing up. It's no good saying these houses are going to be built in years' time. We need it now, don't we?
I agree, but it's what I said.
If they move us before he even gets halfway through his course and they move us on to the other side of Manchester, he's then going to struggle to get to college and get into some form of education that he's not been able to get into since being younger through primary school. And it's all just been one big, do you know what I mean, one cycle?
I do. It's very disruptive for kids' education to be in temporary accommodation. So I get everything that you're saying. I think generations of politicians are culpable here. The decisions back in the 80s to sort of say right to buy, but we don't let you use the proceeds to replace the houses that you're losing, was catastrophic in my view. They were prohibited from replacing the lost houses, and I think we're reaping the kind of cost of that now. And you see the cost is felt in the benefit system, because the benefit system has to chase rents in the private sector through local housing allowance. The councils have to pay to house people like yourself, because there aren't affordable homes. That is a massive, in my view, a massive wrong turn. And I strongly believe that we need to see, as I said before, a council house building programme on the same scale since the Second World War, because nothing would do more to put this country back in a better place in terms of the public finances and people's quality of life than giving people good, secure homes.
Just this lady here, you've patiently had your hand up. Thank you so much for getting the mic to you now.
Thank you so much. Regarding the housing, and my question is regarding antisocial behavior. I have been a victim of antisocial behavior by a neighbor that police knows me very well and the landlord knows me very well, and nothing has been done seriously, because when I say this thing is, they feel, the perpetrators feel that they are untouchable and they can do things and get away with it. So much so that the last incident now was when they used a derogatory word on me, saying, "Does she has a ball?" Then when I raised that concern to the landlord, and they cautioned them, and this very neighbor brought in his friends to come and attack me. So this time around now, my life has been a nightmare because of this thing for over 7 years. And it's been ongoing for over 7 years now. And what is put in place for antisocial behavior? Because I believe that some people like me, of people of color, could be passing through this thing and no voice, nobody is hearing their voice. So this is the only way now I could come out to express my wishes and feelings so that my voice will be heard. This very neighbor has stolen my bank card before and nothing is being done about that. Called me fucking nigger, and he said it before camera, and they said, okay, police said, because it was camera, because he wasn't present, nothing was being done. So they're doing things they feel that they can do and get away with. And and things put in place regarding antisocial behavior.
Thank you so much for your question. If we can just remember that this is being live streamed, so we can just remember to keep our language uh, to be appropriate. No, I understand because it's so distressing, isn't it, what you've been through? And I just want to add to that, just before Andy answers, that we did actually have a question on this exact point that you're making from another member of the public who asked what's being done specifically in Edgeley and Stockport to tackle antisocial behaviour. And they said, echoing exactly what you've just said, this person said, what measures are being taken to make sure something happens? Because as a resident, I am sick of the crime. And I think that is the way you
Are
feel,
you
isn't
local
it?
as well? Are
So,
you local to here? Or,
yeah.
no,
So
different place.
clearly people feel strongly about this.
No, of course. And, the Deputy Chief Constable's here tonight and he might want to say something, or Kate Green, Deputy for Policing and Crime. We take this very seriously, and there's just no complacency when we hear what you've just said, what's been presented. It's fundamentally unacceptable. No one should live with that fear or that abuse, so it's not acceptable. And Greater Manchester Police do not have a sort of sense of, well, this is a too low level for. They don't police like that, do you, Terry? You take a strong view on these matters. What we would say is, maybe rather than going into the details here, afterwards, if we take your details, somebody will then look into the situation. But Greater Manchester Police, under its current leadership, is taking a really firm view around all forms of criminal activity and antisocial behaviour. And if you look at the figures, arrests have doubled under this current chief constable. Nearly all forms of neighbourhood crime are significantly down. Better to hear it from you, Terry, than me. I think the audience might want to hear, but those figures are real, aren't they, in terms of the difference you and the chief have made?
Yeah, they are, but I'll pick up on a couple of things because I think in different areas it feels different depending on where you live. So I think first of all, I've got a couple of staff in the room at the end. If you're willing, somebody will just grab you and we'll just get some details. We'll just have a look into it, okay? Because it's unacceptable what you've said. Clearly, I just want to have a look at what we've done, what we can do. So we'll make that commitment. I think on the broader side here is go back 3 or 4 years because of various reasons. GMP had felt the need to strip out neighbourhood policing, which and around that time, Andy, as the mayor, brought the chief and myself over from forces that actually had a different view on neighbourhood policing. We would say that the DNA of GMP needs to be neighbourhood policing. It's not the solution to everything, but it is involved in the solution to everything. And we are very near now maximum capacity in all areas around the neighbourhood policing teams. The budget for those has increased significantly under both governments. Actually, the most recent government that we've been grateful to get a significant uplift in staff, and we're well beyond now 1,000 officers and staff in neighbourhood policing roles. You've got dedicated uniform teams. But what we've done is added to things like, and I'll be surprised in the crime bit if this doesn't come up. But we didn't have a motorcycle team that were trained to deal with pursuits of motorcycles. Most our community meetings, number one issue is the Sirons and the kids on the Sirons. So we've now got a dedicated team doing that. We need more. I'll perhaps come on to that later. But we are investing massively in the prioritisation around neighbourhood policing because we think it's the what's and ending communities. Are we where we need to be yet? No, we're not. We're realists around. We're on a journey on it. But you know, I'm not going to quote all the figures to you because naturally, as my mother is, you'd be cynical around them all. But the fact is that we have increased hugely in neighbourhood policing. You speak to any of our staff, I would be shocked if they don't talk about problem solving neighbourhood policing in local communities. We need to do more, I know we do, but we're certainly in a different place than we were a few years ago.
Thank you, that's the question. We haven't got much time left, so I'm going to move on to children and young people. And we've got a question from Joanne Liston. Hi, Joanne.
Hi, evening, Andy.
Hi, Joanne.
What practical steps can you take to ensure that every young person, regardless of their background, has both a clear route into good work, but also a realistic pathway to home ownership? How do we bring employers, educators, and the ecosystem together to make this happen for young people?
Thank you. So this is a big personal priority of mine. I want to create in Greater Manchester an equal alternative to the university route. The big critique I make of the government I was in, the Blair government, also the coalition government, is they've built an education system that focuses on some young people, but not all young people. 2/3 of young people in Greater Manchester don't go on the traditional university route. So the answer that we're trying to build is the Greater Manchester Baccalaureate. The university route is great for those who want to go on it, but we've got to get back in this country in the business of strong technical education with clear pathways for young people. So everyone at school has got a kind of sense of direction ahead of them as they're coming through at school. And, you know, it's not right in the kind of, well, the Michael Gove years that engineering and something like that were just forced off the curriculum or creative subjects. We put all those things back in. And also we're working, to be fair to their last government, criticise them in some ways, but the T-level reform they brought through is, we think, quite powerful because for those who don't know, it has a 45-day work placement as part of it. And those, from our experience, when we speak to employers around Greater Manchester, are really valuable because it's long enough for the young person to lose the imposter syndrome. You know, I shouldn't be here and I don't feel that I belong here. The 45 days is enough to, you know, really get them over that and get them feeling that, oh yeah, I can do this. We've had them in the Greater Manchester Combined Authorities. The young people are brilliant. They start giving you more than you're giving them because they start giving you, why are you doing that like that? And, you know, that digital thing's not right. You know, it's brilliant what we do with people. So to answer you that very directly, my aim is to have a 45-day work placement for every young person who wants one in Greater Manchester by 2030. I know these dates sound far off, but that means getting 25,000 of these things. So we are working on it really hard. We brought on new placements from the Christie Hospital this year. The B Network are giving us loads. Greater Manchester Police are taking T-level students. All the big employers in the city are doing it. It's a path for everyone, including supported pathways. The lady mentioned autism before, for young kids with additional needs, or young people who are coming through, let's say, the violence reduction unit. So it's a path for everybody. That's what I believe in. And I think it's shameful, actually, in this country that we've kind of, in many ways, just focused on some young people and obsessed on that university without putting in place alternatives for other young people. But we are on with it in Greater Manchester, and the system, the MBAC, the Greater Manchester Baccalaureate is what we call it, is really building. If you go on the website now, you'll see the evidence of it. Greater Manchester Apprenticeships and Career Service. You can see how we're laying it out there. And we give young people real-time information on actual jobs in Greater Manchester, the salary. So we're not sending anyone up a dead end here. We're pointing them towards the places where we know we've got really. I'm really passionate about this. I could say so much more, but I know time's tight, Amy.
Yeah, we did also have a question from a member of the board asking about apprenticeship. So, is that something that you think we should be doing more of?
Massively. Degree apprenticeships after the university, we want a lot more of those. Because the thing is, if you get the technical route right, you can get all the way to a level 6 degree qualification without the debt. And I know for a fact that was going to be a really attractive route to many young people in Greater Manchester. And Terry will say, I'm sure, if young people are coming through school with a direction, obviously many more young people will kind of be getting on in life and not coming to the attention of GMP. So this kind of the wider benefits of getting an education system that works for everyone is, well, they're massive, aren't they? And the thing is, for many of us in the room, we remember Manchester in the 90s or the 2000s or whatever. We didn't have the opportunities then. We didn't have the employers. Now we've got big names around here in Stockport in the city centre. Simply weren't there before. Booking.com, Bank of New York, you name it, Media City and everything there. We can get prestige on this route. It's not a second best route by any means, as far as I'm concerned. So the growth in Greater Manchester gives us the chance to do more for our young people. The way I look at it, I always describe it like this. I think that where we're up to as Greater Manchester right now is that the kids can see the skyscrapers from their bedroom window, but they don't yet feel that is a world that they can be in. It's like it's somebody else's world. And what I want to do is make sure you've got that path. They can think, oh well, actually, I could go and do that work placement there.
How much does it cost to live in those skyscrapers? I
Well,
don't think I could afford it.
yeah, quite a lot, I think. But but then again, I don't know. We can't. The city's come a long way, hasn't it? I think, and I think Stockport is rising because the city is strong. There's no point in denying it. That is the truth of it. So we've kind of, well, not we, as people before me, really got the city growing and sort of thriving again. But it's a case of taking the growth and making it work for everyone, and that's why this MBAC idea is really fundamental to me and everything I'm about. It's why I fund the free bus pass for 16 to 18-year-olds. Because picking up what the lady said before about her son, I recognise that the jobs are not evenly distributed around Greater Manchester. Many are now in the centre. But the fact that we give everyone a free bus pass at 16, I always say to, and I can't go and speak to young people at Thomas Aquinas or wherever in your schools. I was in some of your schools today. This is our statement of belief in you as our next generation. We back you with that bus pass to go and find your opportunity. And we're really, really strong on this. And the data says Greater Manchester is outperforming national standards on T levels because I think some of the emphasis we put on all of this, and I'm really proud of that fact.
Question from the gentleman at the front. Okay, well, just before we we'll come on to you in just one moment. Has anybody else got anything they want to ask? Gentleman there in the front, yeah.
Hi, Andy. David Muir. I've been in technology and digital for the last 25 years in Manchester in one way, shape or form. You've kindly opened a couple of businesses that I'd set up, including Code Nation, the education business.
Yeah.
We've just recently done a big project with DSIT up in Lancashire to try and help 12-year-olds and upwards to be inspired into a pathway in digital and technology. The question really is, what do we do in the AI sphere, digital, to inspire more 12-year-olds to see that pathway into digital and technology?
Great question, David. So we're really conscious of this. And I'm no digital expert, as you probably know. But what I do know is the computer science GCSE isn't necessarily the best, is it, in terms of getting people ready for the world of digital and tech as it is now. We're really proud of something, and I think we need to promote it more, Amy, to be honest with you. We've got a partnership with something called the Raspberry Pi Foundation, which you will know, but I'd recommend it to others in the room. And we are trialing something that they think will be a global qualification eventually. It's an online course that aimed at young people age 14, 16, 18 that will give them a qualification that is in a very sort of work-related context. And that's a curriculum that they have built They are trialling it now in Greater Manchester, and it's live in this academic year for the first time. So I would say to anybody who's interested in that and has got young people who you're trying to sort of, make sure you open up all their horizons, look that up. That is being, so I say, trialed here. We've got 70,000, or no, I think the latest count is about 40 to 50,000 vacancies in the digital and tech sector in Greater Manchester. There are amazing jobs out there, and what we want to do is give that confidence and that expertise to young people. So that is the big thing that we're doing alongside people going into schools. The Raspberry Pi qualification is an amazing opportunity for the young people of Greater Manchester that's not available to young people elsewhere. And I would say to any of them, do it now because it will really give you an edge going forward.
Thank you. One more question just at the back there. Yes, please.
Hi, Andy. My question is, how is AI reshaping leadership, education, and public services in Manchester? So I've been trying to reach out to you personally because I'm very sure you're used to my face now. So we've been trying to get to you because we're hosting one of the most well-educative and informative AI events in collaboration with Google and some of the well-known universities here in Manchester, the University of Stockport, the University of Bolton. We have top AI leaders and doctors, engineers. They are coming to speak. We've been trying to get hold of you, and I'm very sure it's in my email. So the event is scheduled for Wednesday, Oxford Road.
This next Wednesday.
This coming Wednesday, actually close
Okay.
to your office, just beside your office, actually.
Yeah.
So
I think there's a fairly high likelihood there's something in my diary for next Wednesday, but I will look it up. I'll get your details before we go. I'll see if there's anything I can do to support you. Well, there's loads going on in AI in Manchester. We've got more people by headcount working in AI than anyone else in the country, including London. And our public services, to answer your question, are really starting to look at how we can use it. So we've got a digital health and care record in Greater Manchester. So all of you have a digital record. I know it's kind of controversial, but I think AI can play a real part in terms of, how you might use AI to spot or to identify people who might have a health condition that needs to be looked at. You're looking at health data. All got to be done ethically and with people's support. But we're really excited about the GM's potential in AI. We think it's absolutely massive. We ran a trial. You won't believe it. I know you'll think I'm kind of not being honest here. We did run a trial with AI on our traffic lights to try and improve them and see if we could change them. I know. I thought you'd react like that if I said that. It is true, and it did improve throughput by 9%. So we're going to do a bigger one soon. Amy, the lady up there had a question. I don't want to miss the question. Is it really quick? Sorry.
Yeah, it's going to have to be really quick. So really
Go on.
5 minutes away.
I'm at the other end of the scale, so I look after the most precious thing that everyone's got, their own little babies and children. I have 2 to 4-year-olds. I can't get staff because nobody, apprentices or anybody, wants to come to us because we're all on the minimum wage when they qualify. So my question is, how do we get staff?
Yeah, well, we do have a gateway on the MBAC for childcare linked to wider care. So there is. You could talk to our team about how we could work with you to see if we can improve visibility of some of the options that you've got. I think it's a reflection, isn't it, of not enough funding in your sector. That would be true of social care as well. But I can connect you to our education and skills team to see if there's anything we can do to give you that extra connection to young people. I think it's still a profession that a lot of young people want to move towards. It's just the salary levels, isn't it, that is the issue. But let's see if we can help.
We've got one more question, which I really want to get to because I really think it's an important issue, and it comes from James White. James.
Thanks. Good evening, Andy. I thought this was timely when I submitted it, and tragically, I think it's even more so now. Last Wednesday was World Suicide Prevention Day. Suicide remains the biggest killer of men under the age of 50. Are there ways that you can support organisations like Men's Health, where I work? We run free peer-to-peer support groups, including this very night, to help more men across Greater Manchester.
Great question, James. Credit to you for what you're doing. I don't know if anyone's ever been to some of the groups like the kind James just mentioned. I went once, and it was actually one of the most moving experiences I've ever had. Because like men were coming in, high vis, some in suits, just a complete mixture. But they were having conversations that once things are, you know the thing that I'm describing, they couldn't have in the family, probably wouldn't tell a doctor or anyone at work. And it is kind of incredible. Andy's Man Club is a service similar to yours, isn't it? And there's really amazing services out there. You know, when I came in as mayor, one of the first things that the health team said to me is, we want to run a campaign on suicide. And I was like, oh, is that a bit too, like, I had that, and people have that reaction, don't they? But they said, no, that's the point. You've got to get over that. You've got to get more direct about it. And that's why we're saying to you, run this campaign. So we did. It's called Shining a Light on Suicide, which you're probably familiar with. I'd recommend it to everybody. There's a website. You get free training, because everyone kind of fears how to talk about it, don't they, and what to say, and particularly for somebody who might have those thoughts. It's really powerful. We've recently partnered at my instigation with the League Managers Association. So I don't know if you've seen that, but they represent all football managers in the country. And if you look on our sort of X feed, you'll see the stuff that the League Managers Association put out supporting the Greater Manchester campaign. Every Premier League manager, because you kind of got to get voices, certainly not a politician's going to be, voices that can cut through, particularly to men of a certain age. But don't forget, suicide is the biggest killer in women under 35. This is the the stress that people have talked about tonight, that people are experiencing. That is obviously what we're contending with, isn't it? So credit to you. We are trying to bring in Greater Manchester what we call Live Well, which is a new movement to offer practical support for people every day, funding organisations like yours to provide that help in every community. So if you're not connected to Live Well, please look it up, because we want to deliver it through the community and voluntary sector. And we've got to get more serious about opening up the spaces where people can get the help and have the conversation.
Thank you so much for your question, James. It sounds like you do some incredible work.
Yeah.
And we are, I'm afraid, out of time. Just before we go, though, I just want to confirm on the record, you heard it here first, you are not ruling yourself out of being the next Prime Minister. Can I have that as a yes? I'm not.
Well, maybe the audience have just ruled it out after my answers tonight. I don't know. But I don't know. For me, I wish we would talk more seriously about how do we make politics more generally work, rather than just who's next and who's the. It isn't working, is it? And I feel this massively. When I look back at that Westminster world, it's one of those things that really needs to change a lot, and particularly how national government treats local government. Councils just don't have enough money. Councillors can't do enough. Politics isn't working. So I'm only interested in going back, if I do, at any point. You've got to have some quite radical change, in my view. Radical change on council housing. Radical change on education, that conversation we were just having, so that you give parity to technical and academic education. Radical change on infrastructure, like we were picking up before. Why is the North still second class? Why can't they see us from London when it comes to pressure on the M60 and the West Coast Main Line? This change we brought through the B network should be all over the country. I personally think devolution everywhere, proportional representation, an elected House of Lords, the Hillsborough Law to make people tell the truth in public services. The country needs quite a radical change, in my view. I don't know if I'm kind of. Well, okay, thank you. But
Let's give Andy a round of applause.
well, there we go. That's
Thank you
my
for
rallying
joining us.
call at the end. Thank you very much. Thank you, Amy, as well. Thanks everyone for coming out tonight.
Great note to end on. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Andy.